Okay, in this short video I'm going to show you how to adjust a quiz that's already been created. So if you're teaching one of our um, course elements that SCME put together, and you have a quiz you want to give your students, but say you want to change the timing of the quiz or some of the options, you can easily do that as the teacher. So I'm actually in the role of teacher right now, so the screen looks very similar to what you would be seeing if you were to teach one of our courses. First thing you want to do is turn editing on, and so when you turn editing on, of course, you will get more options and things that you can do. So you can hide entire units if you want to. You can edit individual components in your course. And you can feel free to do that. So I'm going to scroll down to one of the units that I actually have to fix and make an adjustment to. So it's going to be the Introduction to Sensors unit. And this unit, has some lectures, reading materials, and you can see by the icons that there are different types of activities in here. The one with the little hand on it that you see right here is an assignment, and there are the assignment instructions. But what we're going to worry about today is just a quiz. So this is a quiz. If you click on the left link, you'll go into the quiz itself, and you can change the questions and the value of each question. We're not going to talk about that right now. We're going to assume that the questions are all set up and the quiz is set up properly. But say the timing is off. So if you go into the edit settings, you can go into the settings. It'll come up, and there's the name of your quiz. You could change the name if you find a typo or you want to call it something else. You have a description here. Now, this description you can either show or display or not by clicking or unclicking this button. Okay, so the description shows up underneath the title, the name, and you can also use this description page to write yourself a note and then not make it accessible to the students, or they won't see it if you unclick this box. What most teachers want to do is adjust the timing. So if I click on the timing link here, you can see these different fields that come up. So you can open the quiz at a certain day, you can close the quiz on a certain day, and you can give it a certain time limit. You can have the computer check different options so that it'll automatically submit if the student doesn't finish in the time allotted to them, or it'll just shut them off. And then you have a submission grace period. Now, you're not going to remember everything I tell you when you go through and try to update a quiz someday in the future. So if you notice, these little question marks are really valuable. So if I roll over the question mark that's next to the open quiz, if you click on it, it gives you a detailed explanation. So it says students can only start their attempts after the open time, and they must complete their attempts before the close time. And then if you want more help, you can click on that and get more help. So you can enable or disable this. So some people do asynchronous and some people do synchronous teaching. So asynchronous is you let the students go at their own pace. So you would not enable any of these, right? The open and close dates, you wouldn't enable any of those, and that means the quiz is open any time of day, anytime they want. So if you disable it by unchecking the enable button, then these dates have no meaning. Okay, it's always open. You can set the time limit, and I usually like to set a time limit for my students, because if you give them too much time, what they'll do is they won't even read the materials. They'll just go in and make open up the quiz and then look for the answers in the materials. And that's really not what you want them to do. You want them to read, to do the homework, to do the assignments, and study, and then prepare to take the online quiz. So I tend to make them a little bit shorter, so it doesn't allow them to go hunt for the answers, because it's not about how well you Google or how well you use search features in PDF readers. It's really about what you've learned, right, and demonstrate your learning. Now, some of you might be teaching students that have certain disabilities, or they're dyslexic or something, and they are required to take more time, and you can actually set up special timing for them if you want to. Okay, so in my case, I opened it up on the 25th of November, and I closed it on the same day, and I gave them 1 day to do the quiz. That way it forces them to get their homework done, study, and get ready for the quiz. You can also shorten this time and make it only open during class time, which I do as well. So I would make it open from 8 to 9, and class starts at 8, so they would come to class and I'd say, okay, go take your quiz, and they can log into the computer system and take their quiz, and from whenever they start, they have 20 minutes to do it. Now the quiz closes at the close time, so you can shut them down at 9 o'clock. So if they come in late to class and start late on their quiz, then they don't have as much time as other people. So you can do that. I like to use open attempts are submitted automatically. Okay, so if we say, well, what does that mean? It says that the setting controls what happens if the student fails to submit their quiz. So there's a submit button at the end. Okay, so if the time expires and they haven't hit submit, if they're actively working on the quiz at the time, then a countdown timer will appear, and then it'll automatically submit the attempt for them. If they are logged out, if they forgot to hit the submit button, let's say they answered all the questions and just logged out, then the setting will also automatically submit. So some of my students forget to hit the final submit button after they take the quiz. They answer all the questions, but they don't hit submit, and that's kind of a drag. Then they would get a 0 if I didn't have that. But there are other options. So you can put a grace period when open attempts can be submitted, but no more questions can be answered, which I don't understand why anybody would use that, but you might have a reason for that. And then I think the default is attempts must be submitted before the time expires or they are not counted. Sometimes that's might be useful if you want to teach the students that there's a process to doing things. So they open up the quiz, they take the quiz, they answer all the questions, and when they're done they have to hit the submit button. Okay, I rarely use the grace period. I don't find much use for that, so I usually leave that off. But I will open and close the quiz. So in my case, I'm going to extend the time that the quiz is open. So today is December 2nd, actually. So I'll go in here, change it to December, and then I can change the date. Let's say I want them to get it done by the end of the week. I believe December 6th is Saturday at midnight, because I'm going to turn in grades on Sunday, so I've extended it for them. Another way you can do it is click on the little calendar button, and you can pick the date that you want, right, and do it that way, and then change the time. Okay, so it's 23:59, which is pretty much midnight. Okay, so timing is probably the thing you're going to work with the most. Okay, so if that's all you're going to change on the timing, and you're done making the changes, you must save this. If you hit cancel or just log out, it won't take the save. Okay, so you must save and return to course to save it. You can also go save and display to see what it looks like. So I'm going to click on save and display. And there it is. So it says one attempt is allowed. It's open on the 25th. It closes on the 6th. They have 20 minutes to do the quiz. Okay, and then as a teacher you can preview it. So you preview it. It asks you if you want to start the attempt. You start it, and there are the questions. Okay, so this is what the students would see. Okay, and then you can go in and edit individual questions if you want to. Okay, and you can see some of the formatting's a little messed up, but nothing major there. And this this quiz is set up so everything is on one page, I believe. Well, maybe not. You can hit next. Okay, yeah, everything was on one page in this case, so it only had 8 questions. Okay, so I hit next. I didn't answer anything. It says it's not answered. And you can see there's a countdown timer here. So I'm going to, oh, I forgot to answer the questions. I can go back, return to attempt. And I'm just going to randomly pick some answers here. Okay, so you can see, you know, I'm picking answers. Okay, and you can also check the answers. You know, you could make sure that if the students answer correctly, they get full credit. It's another thing you can do. Now I hit next, and it says the answers are saved. Okay, so I'm all done. Notice that I think these change color as you go through the tests, at least for the students they do. And then you hit submit and finish, and it says once you submit you can't change your answers. And you say, yep, I want to submit and finish. Now if I forget to submit and finish, it'll go ahead and submit it for you if you forget, right? Because we set that one parameter that way. So, you know, if the time is done, it'll submit it automatically, regardless if you're done or not. Now, you know, the way this quiz is set up is when you're done, you get to see your answers immediately, and if you're right or not. And since I only allow the students to take this quiz once, okay, you know, it wouldn't be fair if they were allowed to take it twice, because they would just write all the answers down and then take it a second time and score high. All right, so I only let them take the quiz once, and it gives them the answers right away when they're done, so they know what they got wrong. Okay, and if they're smart, they'll write this all down, because the final is usually based on these questions. Now, I don't believe my students do that. Most students don't, because they don't make that connection. Okay, so once you're done reviewing it, you can hit finish review if you want to finish the review, and it takes you back here. And it says your final grade for this quiz is 0 out of 50. So guessing doesn't always work. You know, 8 questions, 4 answers per question. There are going to be times when you get them all wrong. All right, so let's go back to the quiz. Okay, so actually you can go back to the unit. All right, and then you can find the quiz again, and you can hit edit and edit settings. So that's one way to get in there, but there is another way. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and cancel this out and show you a different way to access the same information. So if you happen to click on the quiz, okay, you'll get this screen on your attempt. And you say, well, I want to edit this thing. You can scroll down and to the administration block, and you'll see, since you clicked on a quiz, it'll come up with this quiz administration. So right here you can edit settings as well. You can also override, you can edit the quizzes specifically and do that kind of thing. But what we're going to do is just go back to edit settings again. Okay, we already looked at the timing and fixed that. Now what about the grades? Well, I created a grade category in most of the Moodle courses that's called quizzes, and I have one called assignments, and then I have another one called participation. And that's typically the 3 main categories I set up in my courses. And you can add more categories if you want. You can have midterm and final, quizzes, tests, you know, presentations, whatever you want to call it. But the way I grade this is that it's going to go in the quiz category, and it's going to take the highest grade. And since there's only one allowed attempt, right? If you go, let's see, where is that? Forgot where that is. Oh, right here. It says attempts allowed. I only allow the students to have one attempt because these are really unit exams. We call them quizzes, but they're assessments of the unit. And I don't want them to have multiple tries, because then it becomes a video game and they just keep shooting until they get a high score. Okay, and that they're not learning. So only one attempt, and it teaches students to be prepared. It's like you only get one interview. Sometimes you're called back for a second interview, but You only get one interview, so they need to learn to prepare. Okay, and then the layout. Okay, you can do a new page for every question. Okay, you can do a new page for every 8 questions. Okay, so you can do multiple ways of presenting the questions. Sometimes it's better to just show them one question at a time per screen, and then that way they stay focused on the one question, and they're not hunting around and trying to get clues on the answer to the current question by looking at other questions that follow. Okay, and then you have question behavior. Do you want to shuffle within answer or within questions? What does that mean? Well, it says if enabled, the parts making up each question will be randomly shuffled each time the student attempts the quiz, provided the option is also enabled in the question settings. This setting only applies to questions that have multiple parts, such as multiple choice or matching questions. So it'll shuffle the answers around, and I do that often because some kids can really remember, oh, I answered A and it was right. And then if they see it on the final, the same question on the final later, or if I allow them to retake the test because of some technical issues, they may say, oh, I remember that one was A. Well, that won't work. So how do the questions behave? Well, we give them deferred feedback. So what's deferred feedback? Well, students can interact with the question and the quiz in various different ways. For example, you may wish the student to enter an answer to each question, then submit the entire quiz before anything is graded and they get feedback. That's deferred feedback, and I prefer to do that. Alternatively, you could have the students submit each question as they go along and get immediate feedback, so they know right away if they got that specific question right or wrong. If they do not get it right immediately, have another try or fewer marks. Or for fewer marks. So you can actually have them answer it. If they get it wrong and then they get it right the second time, they don't get full credit, they get partial credit because they already messed up on one answer. So you might want to experiment with that with your students, depending what type of students you have. Those are probably the 2 most commonly used modes of behavior. Okay, so you have some options there, so it's pretty good. Show more. Each attempt builds on the last. You can do that. I have never used this, so I'm not really familiar with it. But basically, it's the help section says if multiple attempts are allowed and this setting is enabled, each new quiz attempt will contain the results from the previous attempt. This allows a quiz to be completed over several attempts. So, if you have a 20-page or a 20-question quiz and they get 5 right, they retake it. If you select this, if you enable this, then they'll see the 5 they got right, and then they'll only have to change the answers on the ones they got wrong. So you could use that in a way to reinforce learning, but I tend not to use that. Review options. Okay, during the attempt, we don't let them see any kind of response. But after the attempt, they can see what's correct, and all of that. Later, when the quiz is still open, they can look at it, and even after the quiz is closed, they can look at their results. So I believe this is the default, and that's what I tend to use. You can adjust the decimal places for the score. So, some kids, 92.33, is that an A minus or an A? Then you can just say, let's make it a 92, right? You can knock off the decimal places. I'm not sure what extra restrictions are. Oh, here we go. You can create a password. So if you want to give certain students to the ability to take multiple tries. So, for example, Valerie has students that have different levels of learning disabilities. She might want to create a password for her special students that allows them to take it 3 or 4 times before it shuts them out. And then the better students, or the students that don't need that extra help, won't be able to do that if they don't have the password. Okay, so you could put a password in here, and then you can say, okay, enforce delay between first and second attempts. So you can enable this, and that'll give them a delay. So if they make an attempt and they do badly and they want to do it again, they have to wait so long. So you might say a 10-minute delay, an hour delay, so they can go study, whatever. Okay, and then you can say you know, every attempt after that you can make the time shorter. So you might say, okay, give it a day between the first and second attempt, and then let them do it every 5 minutes, you know, for the third, fourth, and fifth attempt. Okay, and then you can turn this browser security on or off. I typically don't care about that stuff because the kids always have a phone. You know, they have an iPad and they use the computer in the computer lab. So enforcing a browser security, which means they can't go Google the answer somewhere else. That's the intent of that. I usually don't use. If I want the test to be proctored, you know, if I want it closed notes, closed books, then I just have them take it in the classroom, in the computer lab, and I monitor the students carefully. Okay, so those are some extra restrictions you can do. And then you can do this overall feedback. So you can say, okay, if they get a 95 or a 90, let's say they get a 90 or higher, you want to give them a feedback and say, good job. And then if they get a B, 80% or higher, you can say, try to prepare better next time. Next time. And then if they get a C or better, say, you know, looks like you should take notes, take better notes, and review more often. Basically study. A lot of kids don't know how to study. And then you can say if you know, if it's less than 70, let's say 6, you know, below something. Because I think this is when it's below 70, you get this. When it's below 80, you get this one. When it's below, no, maybe it's the other way around. Oh, this is the 100%. Good job. 90%. Not bad. 80%. A bit more studying. Would get you to an A, for example, right? You get the idea. 70. You know, you know, start earlier. Start earlier. Read carefully. Take notes. And you'll do better next time. Something like that. Okay, and then you can make it as fine as you want. Comment settings. This is interesting. You can hide the quiz until you're ready to let it out. And this is something you really want to look at because inadvertently I've hidden quizzes, and that's a problem. Now I don't use the ID number or grouping number or anything like that, but you could theoretically give a quiz to a group of students. Like if you're doing a team project and one group has to study photolithography and another studies etch, then you can have the group, you know, take the test separately. But I'm going to save and you know, you can save and return or save it. Okay, I made a mistake here. It says feedback grade boundaries must be 0 and 90%, or 0 and 100%. Your value entered in boundary 1 is out of range, so I said 90 instead of 90%. So you know, 90 is 900%, right? So you got to put a percent sign in there, or go 0.7. So let's see if that works. So if you say something and return to course and it doesn't return to course, then scroll around and you'll see it. All right, so now, now we have that quiz has been updated. So that's all there is to it. I'm not going to go into editing the quiz itself. I'm just going to show you how to change the timing and some of the options. So that's all there is. Let me know if you have any questions.